This episode of This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty is brought to you by Ron's Records, down on Bleecker. We pay big cash for used records. Hey, welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. This is episode number 25. In this episode, we talked to Chris Lopresti, WFAN and SiriusXM sports update anchor, and a huge Seinfeld fan. If you like what you're hearing, please pass it on. And drop us a line on Twitter at thisThirsty. Follow us at thisThirsty. You can email us at pretzelspod@protonmail.com. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Can you hear us?
What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going, man?
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You good?
Kids in bed, all good?
Kids are, my youngest is sleeping and my wife is getting my 4.5-year-old to sleep right now. So I've got quiet downstairs and I've got the Thursday night game about to start here.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Yeah, we figured it was right at the start of the game.
What's better, a little football and a little Seinfeld, right? For a half
Perfect.
hour.
Perfect.
So
I couldn't draw it up any
as our
better.
guest here on this podcast is making me thirsty. You guys know CeeLo from WFAN. He's been the New York Jets beat reporter. Actually, Chris, you still doing the Jet stuff?
I haven't done it the last couple of years, but it's funny. I grew up a Giant fan, but I actually still follow the Jets closer probably than I do the Giants, just from having been around them for 5 years or so. But no, I actually haven't done the day-to-day stuff on them for the last couple of seasons for reasons we don't have to get into. But I do miss it. It was fun.
Did it have to do with Idzik? What do you got?
Oh no, nothing, nothing on the Jet side, on the employer side. But it's all good. These things happen.
All right. Well,
so.
you got two big fans. We love you when you're on the morning show, etc.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's get into it. So you're obviously a big Seinfeld fan. Just curious. Listen, you're a young guy, right? You were probably 3 years old when Seinfeld started. So tell us a little bit about how you got into it. Like, what was that first aha moment, and some of your favorite episodes, maybe?
That's actually I think nailed that on the head. I think I was 3 going on 4 when it first started. Yeah, so certainly I wasn't privy to it in the young days. But my introduction to it was my dad. Both of my parents, but especially my dad, was a religious viewer. Loved it every single week. So it's probably later in the show, really probably the last couple of seasons, where I would sit down and watch with them every week when it came on, and a lot of the stuff at the time was over my head because I was kind of just entering the adolescent years, and kind of getting into that stage where you understood some of it a little bit better. But I think I probably was drawn to it just because of the reaction that it got from my parents and my dad especially. He'd come home from work and he'd look forward to watching it, and it would just make him laugh so hard that I think just naturally I was drawn to it. And I was like, wow, he's really into this. Let me check it out. And I think just over the years, as I got older, and obviously the reruns were on so much, and then, I have the complete series on DVD, and now in the streaming age, it's just that thing that I turn to a lot of nights, and I'm like, hey, I need something light to just end the night and kind of before I drift off to sleep, keep it light, have a good laugh. And I know all the lines. I know what's coming. I've seen every single episode, some of them many times over, but it still gets me every single time. And it makes me laugh so hard. And the stories, even though I know them, are just so ridiculous that they still just, it's so entertaining. So I can never, it's a show I will never, ever tire or get sick of.
We're us too, man. It's fun. It's interesting you brought up your dad getting you into it, because my daughters are 6 and 8, and just before we came on the show, my 8-year-old asked, can we watch a Seinfeld episode? So I already got them on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was telling Chris before you came on, I have to fast forward some parts of some episodes. I'm like, oh, this happens to this one. I'm like, fast forward it.
Sure.
But they've been asking me. I've been telling them when they asked for bedtime stories since they were toddlers. I was telling them Seinfeld, plots. So now they're like, can we watch an episode? And so I started getting them slowly into it. So you can never start. Yeah, you can never start too young.
And You know what's great? I understand when they're that young, you certainly have to fast forward through some parts because they'll be asking questions. But
Right.
that was one of the things that I loved and still love because of the restrictions of being on network TV and how they were able to dance around things and not actually say the words or go into the detail, but still you came away from it fully understanding what they were getting at. And I feel like they were probably the first show to really do that and be as successful as they were. And it was just one of those things that, I mean, obviously in this day and age, you see it probably in a lot of different instances, maybe not as much now because network TV is kind of dying out a little bit because you have all these other platforms, but being able to get their point across without crossing the line was something they were so good at. And I always had a great appreciation for that.
That's great writing. I mean, you can't beat that, from the contest to, this, that, the other thing. I mean, everything they did, they were talking about like topics that you couldn't talk about on network television. But look, to your point, the way they wrote it, it was like they just got away with it. And
perfect.
It's crazy to think about. And that's the thing, though. Kids will ask questions because it kind of goes over their head, but they're not sure what's going on. So
yeah,
it's still it's unbelievable how well they wrote.
Oh, I mean, obviously what Larry David has done in the year since the show ended speaks to his brilliance and his disturbed mind as well. And I mean, I've seen Jerry do some stand up. I saw him live down in Atlantic City one time, and obviously brilliant in his own way. So it's been kind of fun to see them after the show and what they've gone on to do. Michael Richards maybe not so much, but the other, and that's another aspect, the secondary characters, or even the one episode arc characters.
Who do you got? Who are your favorites from secondaries?
I would say the one that jumps out to me the most, I love Peterman. Peterman's one of my favorites.
Okay.
I mean, in so many different ways, and I can't even. I mean, I'm laughing just thinking about him, the mannerisms and some of the stories he was involved in. Like I just recently watched the Code with with George. Yeah.
So hold
on. We got go ahead. Yeah.
You mentioned disturbed minds, and obviously you have a couple here because we went back to a 2014 tweet of yours.
That's how
that
was impressive that you guys dug that.
I didn't even realize O'Hara did that. I didn't even realize it. I'm like, oh, nice, we got CeeLo, and then all of a sudden I saw someone say like, you went back to 2014 for that tweet.
Well, listen, yeah,
gotta love it. Yeah, I love our research.
So you caught our attention with one of my favorite episodes of all time, The Note.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes. It's in our top 5. I believe it's number 7.
But then you went on and said you love, I think that's cool, love season 9. So
I'm finding out why now, though. Sorry to cut you off, but we're finding out why now, because that's when he got into it. It's like that whole thing when he started, it sounds like around season 8 or 9. Is that why? Because
you know what? I don't even know if it's that simple. I think it's just, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to say it's my favorite season of all time. There's just a couple of episodes. Like I just recently watched The Frogger. I mean, that's one of my favorites as well. So I don't know. I guess it's just a couple of the plot lines and the storylines that have resonated with me. I mean, God, there's episodes from every season that I love and that are classic, and it would be so hard for, like, I've never sat down and tried to rank them. I know people are big into doing that, and I'm assuming you guys probably have at some point.
Yeah.
And that's like when people ask me like, oh, what's your top 5 comedy movies of all time? I can't answer that. I just can't. There's too many. I'm such a movie and a comedy movie, to try and whittle it down would be so hard. And I feel like it would be the same with Seinfeld, because there are very few that if they're on, I'm like, this wasn't so great, I'm going to try. Like I'll even if the overall episode isn't great, I'll immediately know, oh, there's a scene or a line in this episode that I love, so let me leave it on because I want to get to that part. Sure. So it's just it's really hard to
I think that's
to knock the show.
I think it's a good point. That's the beauty of the show is,
that's fair.
There's so many diverse seasons and people come at it from so many different angles, and whether it's the love from their father, where they were in their life, you never know. But the line piece is interesting, right? There's some episodes where lines, you think of the episode based on a line, and some of the other stuff is poor. For instance,
Yeah.
like the yada yada episode, the yada yada stuff drives me crazy, but the episode is actually really good. But what I had a problem with was the first 5 seasons. It was just beautifully written, great characters, and then it got a little gimmicky, right? They pushed the limit with these like catchphrases. So listen, you're nitpicking greatness, right?
Yeah,
But
that's what we
Exactly.
do. That's what this whole podcast is.
it's
basically.
like
Yeah.
it's like sports radio, right? I mean, it's come on.
Yeah, you got to go deep. Yeah,
I mean,
for
you
sure.
mentioned. I mean, we this is our first 20 episodes of this podcast. We just went through every single season, and then at the end, we ranked every single episode. So we it's top of our mind, and we dissected them at every which way. And at some point, like you said, you're nitpicking. It's a different show at the end. It's not that for us.
Certainly.
We like the other one better, but everyone that we've talked to so far agrees that it's almost like two different kind of shows, like the approach they took. And then it's just a matter of what you like. Like we weren't fans of the absurdity that became those later episodes, but some people like that absurdity. That's more funny to them, just seeing how outrageous it gets and everything like that.
Yeah, I think it was easy for me to appreciate both. I know exactly what you mean by that, and I think it's definitely clear, sort of that line of demarcation, right? And I'm sure some of it you can kind of almost tell when Larry David wasn't involved anymore. I mean, that's a big part of it. And yeah, I mean, I get what you mean with the absurd stuff, but I think I just had such a love and appreciation for the characters and their personalities at that point that stuff didn't bother me as much. Like, I guess I was still able to get the enjoyment and the entertainment out of it, recognizing that some of this stuff is, just obviously beyond outlandish and ridiculous. Or I don't know, maybe it's just because there was nothing else that was really quite like it. And it was just sort of, it's like, oh, I love this show so much. I'm not gonna, be down on it now, because I can't get enough, kind of thing. But I know exactly what you mean by that.
Stilo, speaking of Larry David, he was a big Jets fan. Did you ever interact with him over at Florham Park?
No, in fact, I don't think he was ever there on any of the days that I was there, maybe in the years that I was there, or at least if he was, I wasn't aware of it. And really, the only time we would have been aware of that was during training camp, because really during the regular season, the amount of practice that the media and the people on the beat that cover the team are allowed to watch is very minimal. On a normal practice week, like if you're there on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in a normal week, you go out there, guys they're stretching, they're doing some agility work, and you see maybe a special teams period, and then they kick you out of there because they don't want to give away their game plan or anything like that. So even if he was a special guest of Woody Johnson or something on, let's say, a Thursday or a Friday, I probably wouldn't have even seen him. So at training camp, when the practices are open, whether it's to the media or to the fans or both, you see a little bit more of that because you're out there for 2 hours or so, and you have more time to look around and say, oh, is that so-and-so? And there were definitely some, I couldn't even give you a list, but there were some people, like I know the Game of Thrones writer, creator, was a big Jet fan. He was there one day. They'd have just random sporadic people that would kind of pop in here and there, but I never got to rub elbows with the great.
Did you ever talk Seinfeld with any players? Ever come up in conversation?
It probably did at some point. I don't think there's any specific conversations that come to mind, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of standing around during those open locker rooms. There really is. I mean, we'd be in there for 45 minutes to an hour, and you might be waiting on a specific guy who's probably just being a pain in the ass, and he's taking his time in the shower because he wants to keep us all waiting. So yeah, you might hang out at one guy's locker and kind of yuck it up a little bit about, could be anything. Could be anything in pop culture, music, another team, another game, another sport. A lot of guys like to talk about other sports and teams they're into. So probably at some point, but nothing specific that comes to mind.
Well, it's funny. I just recently heard that Larry David called McCagnon a couple years ago before the draft and told him to draft Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I think I heard him tell that story. He did an in studio with the Michael Kay show. Maybe
I didn't know you could mention his name, so
I can mention it. I mean, I probably wouldn't mention it on the airwaves on the fan. But I can say it here. It's all good. I think it was maybe about a year or so ago, and I remember why it was good. It was great, very compelling however long he was in there with them. He was very natural and into it, and gave some great answers and some insight. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's where that story was told. If not, maybe I'm giving the Michael K show credit I shouldn't be giving them, but
No, you're right. You're
that's
right.
that's
Right.
okay. I know Don LaGreca a little bit. He's a real good guy. I've never met Michael K. I know people say he's a good guy as well, but it's one of those things where, I mean, yeah, the stations compete, but I don't wish ill will on anyone or anything like that.
I don't know. While we were on the Jets, maybe thinking Gary V. You ever meet him when he's over?
Never met Gary
No?
V. No, I mean, anytime he's been a guest on the shows, I think he's usually on the phone. Maybe he might have been in studio once or twice, but no, I guess never happened to be. I know he's been on the midday show a bunch of times. I think since Maggie Gray's been working at the Fan, I think he's been on a handful of times with whoever she may have been working with at the time, whether it was Moose now or Bart and Carlin or whatnot. So I've heard him, but I've never actually met him.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So speaking of the Fan, the great Al Dukes was a guest of ours on this podcast as well. If you're familiar with that, he claims he's the biggest Seinfeld fan at the Fan. But and he promised that he would elevate this podcast to over 100 followers. Can you, CeeLo, can you guarantee you'll do that through your following?
I mean, I can try. I don't know if I can guarantee the number because Al, I mean, I have a pretty decent number of followers, but Al dwarfs me. So if he wasn't able to get it done, it would probably take a larger effort on my part, which I could certainly make, but I obviously can't force people to hit the follow button. But I can certainly try, and I will back Al up on. He is a massive. I mean, I feel like he and I are probably in the same category, and there's probably some other guys that work behind the scenes, but Al was one guy that on the air, and I've done it a couple of times, whether it's on the morning show or if I fill in and Al and I do the warm up together from 5 to 6, where I'll drop subtle Seinfeld references in just to see if he's paying attention.
Nice.
And he does. He's pretty good about catching them, and we have a laugh.
Nice.
So he's good like that.
And that's what Seinfeld's all about. And Al's a great sport. We're just kidding, and he referenced all this on the morning show as well. But like that's the beauty of the show is dropping those lines and seeing if people pick up on it. And then it's like the ultimate respect, right? Like, wow, you're not Penske material, right? Like only a Seinfeld fan would get that, right?
Right. That one to me is actually more of an obvious one, but maybe that's just me speaking that way because I'm. Like if you were a casual fan of the show, you might not have known that one as well. But I mean, it is amazing. I give the listeners credit for this, not just with Seinfeld, but every now and then they'll even pick up on a movie reference that I might have dropped in without even consciously saying, let me put this out there and see if anyone picks it up, which is kind of part of my vocabulary, my vernacular. And then someone will tweet me and be like, oh, nice Caddyshack reference or whatever. And you're going to get that with Seinfeld sometimes too. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I did say that. And that's exactly where I got it from.
Speaking of the line, did you have like buddies like growing up? Because we touched on, I mean, you're the first guest that's a few years younger than us. And we started watching it when we were like 12 when it aired, right? So we were, not everyone was talking about it. We were obviously talking about it. We go over it all the time. We were talking about it when we were that young. But did you have buddies? Were all your friends into it, or are they more like friends or whatever else was on at the time? I don't remember that much. Like, were they like, what are you watching this show about 4 people in New York, adults, and you're, 15, 12, whatever you were, 18, I don't know how old you were. But you know what I'm saying? Like, did you, even in college, I don't know, Quinnipiac, was there anyone that like, because it's kind of local, was that like
nice job. Nice job, man. Does his homework.
Yeah. That like, I don't know. I'm just, because a lot of times we find like Seinfeld fans who are like, what's the word? Like lone wolves. Like they don't have, that's why it's so great when you find someone who's dropped those lines, like you said before. Did you, all your buddies like that or not so much? I mean,
I had a bunch of them that for sure were into it. That maybe we weren't comparing notes and quoting like while the show was still active, just because, like I said,
PIX reruns. No?
Well, that's what I mean. After the series ended, when the reruns, for sure. Because I'm trying to think now. Last season was what, 98? Was that when it aired?
Yeah.
Or 97, 98? Was it 97? It was 97, 98, right?
Yes.
Or was it 98, 99? 97, 98. So I was 11 going on 12, right? So it
Well,
wasn't that.
I'm just talking general, like even when the reruns.
Oh yeah,
like were you
for
guys
sure.
all
But that's
into
what I
it?
mean. It was more later on. Yeah,
Right.
reruns. Definitely in college. It's funny you bring up college in Quinnipiac because we actually. I'm trying to remember now if it was must have been junior or senior year when we were further on into like the classes you take for your major, the more specific stuff. So I was in broadcast journalism. And it was either a TV production or a media studies class where one of the assignments was we had to recreate a couple of scenes from a movie or a show. So some friends of mine in the class, two guys and a gal that we got grouped together. I forget how we even decided this is what we were going to do, but we did 3 or 4 scenes from The Marine Biologist, which is another one of my all-time favorites.
Wow. Yeah.
So I have the tape somewhere. And it's not like a VHS or DVD that I could just pop in. It's like one of these little cassettes that went into a video camera.
Yep.
And I'm gonna have to go and get that, like put on a disc someday, or like a media flash drive or something, so that I can preserve. I haven't watched it in probably 10 years, but we did.
That's awesome.
I remember vividly 2 of the scenes we did. They were both, based in the diner there at the restaurant.
And who were you?
The name of I was George.
Ah.
And so the first scene that I did with one of my
he was angry that day, my friends.
Right. Well, the first scene was he was Jerry, and he was delivering the news to me that, hey, I ran into Diane Decon, and I made him,
she's the it girl,
marine biologist, right? So we did that scene, the 2 of us. And then the group of 4 did the final scene where they're sitting down at the golf ball and all that. So yeah, hole in one. So
that's classic.
So there's college, right? There's a great example of it where all 4 of us were up on it, and we were able to pull that off and submit that for an actual assignment in class. And we had a great time doing it, obviously.
That's an
classic, man. That's
excellent show.
Yeah, that's a great story.
I'm glad you chose that one.
Yeah, that's a great one to choose too.
That's one that, like, without even looking, I know I said I probably couldn't rank them. I might just be able to pick 10 that would be hey, if I could only pick 10 to watch for the rest of my life, I might not be able to rank them in order, but that one would definitely be in my 10 easily. Yeah. I don't even have to think about it.
So yeah, give us 5.
That hits 6 for us.
Oh wow. Oh my God. You can put me, see, it's funny. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should like go and take some notes just to make, because if they put me on the spot. Here's another one that I just it's actually a back-to-back. And see, the other thing is, I don't always, the way I remember them or name them isn't always
right. No, we found that too. Going through every episode, we found that it was so weird. We're like, that was the name of this one? Like, that's not what,
yeah.
It's
so
just, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The back-to-back sequence, because I recently, things will happen in my everyday life, and I'm like, oh, I want to go back and watch that episode now, so I'll go find it. So the back-to-back combo of Kramer burning down Susan's father's cabin into the Cheever letters, because one of my favorite, now again, this is the one where it's the scene itself is what, and I do this with Al all the time, on the air and off the air, and another buddy of mine. I love when they go over to the house and the doorman brings up the box with the Cheever letters, and it basically revealed in front of the entire family that Susan's father had this, homosexual relationship with this other guy. And then the 2 of them, the awkwardness of leaving, and we really should be pointing to his watch. Time is what and I can't, if I had a dime for every time I've said onward and upward in my life because of that scene. I mean, it's just so classic. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So those 2 are up there.
Good call.
No other show has that.
No, nothing. Dude, the season 4 what you're talking about is unbelievable. The Bubble Boy Cheever letters, even to the opera.
It wasn't the cabin. Exactly. Of course. How could I forget? Right. It's the Bubble Boy. That's
the Bubble Boy. Yeah.
The main part,
letters,
right? Yeah. And then he at the end burns down the cabin, and then the Cheever letters.
The very same cigars that he gave him were the ones that burned. You didn't see the irony in that. I don't know why.
Right. As Jerry's trying to lay that out for. Yeah. I mean, I loved a lot of this, the stuff when he was working with the Yankees with the Larry David Steinbrenner. I mean, I just, as a Yankee fan, I get a kick out of that. There's so many of them.
Now we're talking. See, I feel like you're leaning more towards,
Yeah, you didn't like that I brought up the later. See, I'm telling you, dude. I said Here's an Office Space quote for you. I celebrate the whole collection.
The whole
or
collection,
whatever.
yeah.
Not the, was it collection or
Yeah.
I forget what he
Yeah.
said, but something like that. Yeah.
But the Yankee,
But-
well, it's funny. Like on this podcast, we reference kind of, the expression like pink hat fan.
The people
He's
that
a
call
real
it,
sports fan.
it's fashionable to wear the Yankee, the different color Yankee hat. I know what you're saying.
I bet you. Well, hold on, I'm betting this. You're probably like a Paul O'Neill guy, like
Love Paul O'Neill, yeah.
versus
Okay.
people just loving Jeter. Is my point. Like
I will,
Well,
full disclosure now, I will say this. I was a big Jeter guy because when he broke onto the scene in 96, I was 10.
yeah,
Right.
was
That's
li-
Of
I'll tell you
course.
this.
He's your
I was
Mattingly.
living- I was-
Mattingly's our guy. Jeter's your
Exactly.
guy.
Now
Yeah.
here's the key, and here's why I'm legit, okay? I was born in Queens. Most of my family's from Queens or the Bronx. My mom was born in the Bronx, right? So we're original New Yorkers. But when I was 4, we moved to Northern Virginia. My dad got transferred for work, so we actually lived like outside DC, in like a DC suburb in Northern Virginia. Obviously, there was no Nationals at the time, so it was Orioles, Washington football team country, and we were New Yorkers that stuck out like a sore thumb. So the Yankees with Jeter, rookie year, 96, there was no Yes Network. So we would just watch them basically whenever they play the Orioles. We'd watch them locally. But I was 10. I was playing Little League Baseball. That was I loved baseball. It's not to say I didn't become a Yankee fan until I was 10. But Jeter being a rookie, me being at that impressionable, I remember we had a 10-year-old All-Stars. I went out and had my parents buy me the same Nike cleats that Jeter was wearing that season as a rookie. Right, and then he hits the home run with Tony Tarasco in the ALCS.
And you were in that country there. You were in Baltimore country for that.
Exactly.
So was I, by the way. But that's a whole other story. But that's crazy, man.
So
for a 10-year-old.
Jeter was my guy because at that age,
of course,
Why wouldn't you? I was an infielder, but I loved them all. That whole era, that dynasty. God. I'll love Scott Brocious till the day I die. And so, and there's a long list.
We became Yankee fans because Danny Tartable was on Seinfeld.
Right. Yeah, that's another. Yeah, it's Danny.
All
the Yankee things they weaved in was great.
Oh, dude, I said it to was it Trainer or Al Dukes? I forgot when he said how can you trade Jay Buhner? I remember watching it live as a kid, and just my mind was blown that this was on television. Because this was my life. All I heard growing up, my grandfather, why'd they trade Jay Buhner? That could be my grandfather yelling at that. I was just like, did they just say why'd they trade Jay Buhner on a TV show? I just couldn't believe it. Man. It blew my mind. I was like, holy cow. Yeah, that was
and you just touched, on Frank Costanza is what can you say? I love watching the outtakes of the scene where with him and Elaine, you want a piece of me, and just the outtakes of her not being able to hold a straight face because it was like, this old man, what are we doing here? He's coming after me. So he's got some classic stuff.
Yeah,
Festivus. I love Festivus. I don't know where you guys stand. It might be a little too cliche for you, but I love that.
O'Hara,
Kruger is great.
Episode. I love Kruger. He's one of my Kruger
favorites. Is great. My dad loves Kruger. We always, all the time. I'm not too worried about it. We use that line constantly. So that's another. It's just the more you talk about it, the characters pop into my head, and I'm that guy. It's a long list. I can go on all night.
Frank and Estelle, in my opinion, carried the show. Not carried the show, but in those later years, they were such a presence. It was.
I know.
It was incredible.
I know.
May Jerry Stiller rest in peace, right?
Yeah.
But
amen. Amen.
You got to score that game.
Yeah, we got 7-0 Seahawks. Out of the corner of my eye saw Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf on, I believe, their first drive. So, and they got the ball back again. So there you go. Seattle
this is a live sports update.
In the neon. That's right. In the neon green here on Thursday night, the Cardinals in all black with NFC West bragging rights up for grabs here.
That's a big game.
So
it is a big game.
Before we let you go, so we'll just a little more on the Jets. Who was your favorite kind of guy you covered, player?
Brandon Marshall.
Yeah,
Brandon Marshall, and I don't even have to think twice about it. Yeah,
he seems like a guy that would be good with you guys, the reporters. He seemed like
what was great about him. It was twofold, right? When the mics were on and the cameras were on, you always knew he was going to have something interesting to say, right? Because he was And look, it's no surprise, right? He works in the media now. He's a guy that he's into that, right? Very intelligent, very passionate, very emotional, very thoughtful. So I mean, I know he had some ups and downs pretty much anywhere he went, but and I'm sure rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But I don't know. I always looked forward to whatever day it was in the given week where he was going to talk, because he would make it seem like it was a pain in the rear and it would take him a, but once he got going, you couldn't stop him, and he'd talk for 15 or 20 minutes and give these insightful answers and tell these stories that he didn't have to. So always enjoyed being up and close to personal with him, and he would also be playful with us, kind of before we started the formal part of it. Like, for example, I'm only 5'7", right? And for radio purposes, I got to be in there tight. So I always would have to camp out and make sure I was like right up against the edge of his locker so I could get my mic, right under his face. There's no way I could be doing this for 15 minutes. My arm would fall off, and it would sound like crap on the air. So I prided myself in getting close. And he, after a couple of weeks when he first got there, recognized it. So he'd always look for me to be in that spot. And then he would before he'd be dressing and putting his body lotion on, and before he would turn around to face the cameras, he'd look at me and kind of flare his nostrils like this and go, "Am I good?" He'd go, "Am I good?" And he was basically asking me to check and make sure he didn't have any boogers hanging out of his nose, because he didn't want that to be seen on TV. So he was fun. He was playful that way, and then he was also very good for our purposes of what we needed in any given week. So that was definitely my favorite guy.
It's funny. You just mentioned body lotion, and I drift right back to Seinfeld, because George getting pulled to side at the airport, and he mentioned that he had lotion.
Oh, I was thinking of Uma Jerry lotion. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got
Banya.
They go, "Is that for your wife?" He's like, "No."
Dude, you just mentioned another one.
That's a great episode.
Oh my God.
Both of those are great episodes.
Just him in general. That's my dad. Another one. My dad.
Banya?
We do his lines all the time. Yeah.
Gold.
All the time. Gold. Yeah. I'm huge. I mean, I am huge. And the Mendy's, the meal and the soup and the salmon. I mean, it's priceless stuff. You can't make it up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this has been great, man. We got a half hour. I don't know if this is usually when we cut these things because we don't want to take up too much time, but it's totally, I mean, we can go, like you said, we can go on all night talking about this. You got anything, O'Hara?
I mean, it's up, you guys have questions, I'll answer.
We appreciate it. And what can we look after you? Like, what's next for you at the Fan? We're going to get you a little overnight?
No, I see. People ask me that, when you get your own show. I've never really aspired to do that for whatever reason. I did it in college and I enjoyed it, but it was it's college radio. It was a once a week thing. I think for me, especially at the stage of life I am now, with two young boys who take up a lot of time and energy,
Right.
Not to say other people don't. God, I mean, Malusis has, 3 boys and they're all close in age. I mean, everyone deals with it, but I think it'd just be hard for me to be, really strongly opinionated on a day in day out basis, especially when you go through those kind of lulls in sports where there's not a whole lot going on. So I've always been more drawn to reality and the facts and stats and stuff like that. And I get that that's maybe not what sells in this day and age, but I think that's why I was drawn towards doing the updates. And now obviously we can add our own little twist to it and have, let your personality out, especially with the morning show. But kind of just having an opinion because I have to have one, or to try and manufacture stuff. It's no disrespect to the people that do it. I just don't think I'd be very good at it. So that's why I like doing what I'm doing. Now, the flip side of that is it kind of limits my opportunities. So I've enjoyed kind of carving out a fill-in role with the morning guys to the point where, they're comfortable with me and vice versa. So what's next? I mean, I can't really get into it too much. I'll say this. I was hoping to have a role on the new afternoon show with Carton and Roberts, and that still could happen. I'm actually filling in tomorrow. I don't know when you guys are posting this, but it'll be Friday, where I may do some stuff with them. So we'll see. I'm kind of just in a wait and see, don't rule anything out mode at the moment. I've been at Fan, including my internship, for 13 years now. Wow. Which is crazy when I stop to think about it. I was 21 when I started there. I'm going to be 35 in 2 months. So I don't know. The business is changing. The station's changing. The company that owns us has changed, and they have a different kind of vision compared to what has worked in the past. So I kind of just have to wait and see and keep taking the opportunities as they come and just make the most of them when they come.
That's awesome. I think, listen, your personality and flexibility came through in this last half hour. So if people don't see that, they're nuts. But
Thank you.
Hey, listen, maybe Big Mike will set up another app and
it's funny. I don't know if I'm taking you guys over your time allotment.
No, we're here all night, man. I was looking for
that.
you.
That's another fence that I really have to kind of stay in the middle on because
we did.
No, not even because.
I mean, I'm a huge Big Mike fan. So.
Well, listen, and people ask me this, not even on the air, on a podcast, just in my private life, I get asked all the time. Hey, what's Francesa really like? From a personal standpoint, there's not a bad word I can say about the guy. He was always very good to me when I was covering the Jets. He had me on a couple of times, which he certainly didn't have to do because it wasn't the kind of thing that he did regularly. Behind the scenes when I stopped doing the Jet gig again because it was seasonal. It wasn't like a full-time job, and I needed something more. He got in touch with Dog and hooked me up and got me in at Sirius. I do part-time work over there. Yeah. So, people like to get on mic and listen. I'll be the first to admit I follow a lot of the accounts that have fun at his expense. I follow Funhouse. I laugh at the stuff that's out there.
Right.
But because to me, again, it's entertaining, and the only reason it exists is because of his popularity, right? So it's the kind of thing that I don't feel guilty laughing at, but when I'm on the air, while I might laugh along, I try not to be disrespectful,
of course, yeah.
or laugh at his expense. And honestly, I think Mike at this stage of his life has done enough and is successful enough where I don't think it really bothers him because
I get the idea that it doesn't, but I don't know him personally.
No, I mean, he can laugh. He can laugh till the cows come. He can laugh all the way to the bank because he's, he and his kids and his family are covered for life. So that's all that really matters. So yeah, in the later years, people had some fun at his expense, but content is king, right? And there's no such thing as bad publicity. A big part of me thinks that community of people that got a kick out of him for those reasons was a big part of his listenership at the end. And you know what? If it led to ratings and advertising and success, it doesn't really matter as long as you're bringing, ears to the sets, or when he was on TV, eyeballs to the screens. I mean, that's all that matters. However you get it done, it's a bottom line business. And for a lot of years, he hit it out of the park as far as, delivering the results went.
Yeah, that's great to hear that he paid it forward. So
yeah, I agree too. I figured that's good to hear.
Again, I can't speak for other people, but I can just speak for myself from both on the air and off the air that he was always very good to me and looked out for me. And he didn't have to do that, especially if he was aware that, hey, this guy works in the morning and, those guys like to get on my case. He very could have easily kind of roped me in with that crew and just said, no, I'm not doing this kid any favors. So I don't know, maybe he wasn't fully aware. It doesn't really matter. He's on to other things now. It's not like we, keep in touch or anything like that, or I'm not going to see him around. But while he was there, I personally couldn't say anything bad about him.
No, listen, your relationship with Mike is like ours with Al Dukes. He's going to take us to new levels.
To connect it all back, we just got through the gamut of sports, and then now to bring it back to Seinfeld, we asked all our guests this question. I think about it, but we like to know, especially with your background. Well, two things. Speaking of your background, you coached high school baseball for how many years? I mean, that's an awesome gig, man. That was
went back
a passion project kind of thing where you were just like, I want to do this and give back to the old high school, or?
Yeah. To be honest with you, without going too deep into without getting too deep or sentimental, it's baseball was my thing, man. My parents have the home videos from when I could stand. It was just, I don't know, it's something that just captured my attention and it just never left. So I mean, that was my sport in high school. I mean, I played hockey, I played basketball growing up, but in high school I was all baseball, and I badly wanted to play in college. But I also recognize, like, hey, I'm 5'7". I'm a decent high school player, but I'm not going anywhere in my life as a baseball player. So I went to Quinnipiac because I knew I wanted to get into communications. But it's a small school, but it was still a Division I school. So they had scholarship athletes. I tried to walk on, it didn't work out. And it's just it's one of those wounds that, if I'm being honest, probably never fully healed, and something that I never really was able to let go of. So going back to my high school and getting involved as a coach was it was great to be able to do it and help out the kids, but it was also therapeutic for me because it put me back on the field. Yeah, obviously I can play old man softball or Sunday old man baseball league, but it's not the same competition. So just getting around that competition again and being back in the program that I played in was incredibly rewarding for me. So yeah, I did it for 8 years. I volunteered with the freshman team. I coached JV myself, and then I spent 6 or 7 seasons as a varsity assistant, where I was kind of a volunteer just because with my radio work, I wasn't able to go all the time. But man, I was so into it. Love going to practice every day. I would go and do advanced scouting of our opponents and write up scouting reports, stuff that probably didn't need to be done. But I was into it and I was passionate about it. And, the feedback from the other coaches and the kids seemed to be positive. So just went with it as long as I could. And the only reason I stopped doing it really was the varsity job at my old high school actually opened up. And I was a finalist. It was down to me and one other guy who's actually a good friend of mine who I've coached with. And we both went in for final interviews with the principal and the athletic director. And, he must have hit it out of the park, and I didn't do so great. So he was very gracious and offered me a spot on his staff. But where I was in my radio career and just needing to, make money to help support my family, I couldn't give the time anymore. So all things equal, I'd love to still be doing it, and I'd love to be out there because it's just something that I've always enjoyed and it's rewarding. But I don't know, maybe down the road somewhere get back involved with it. But
Awesome,
it was awesome while I was there. Yeah.
That's really awesome. Last thing then, I guess, what's your Seinfeld baseball? I know there's a ton of them. Any of the ones that stick out to you from not even just baseball, maybe just sports in general, but there's so much there.
The sports, oh God.
Yeah, come on. There's a lot there, man.
Yeah, well,
there's so much. It doesn't have to be your favorite. I'm not putting it in a spot. Just we go back and forth with a bunch of them.
I know. I don't want to leave anything out.
Paul O'Neill with the 2 home runs.
Yeah,
I'll give you one. I like what the Baltimore game when they get thrown out. Kramer's yelling at Charlie Hayes. So that's
yeah. Right. Well, yeah, and that one, and then there was also the one where Elaine got kicked out. She was wearing the Oriole hat, right?
Yeah, she got.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Or that's the same one, right? Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, being a big baseball guy, I don't know. I actually there's other sports that are popping into my head, like Kramer as the ball boy at the U.S. Open.
That's a good one.
And now, was that the same? No, I guess it couldn't have been. The one where no, it wasn't the same episode, but wherever the episode where they tell the story about Keith Hernandez and the spitter and with Newman
part
and
1 and 2. The Keith Hernandez episode. That's
right. So that's loosely based on sports, but Jerry's reenactment in line with the JFK stuff. I love that. I love when he runs through the whole thing. That's one magic Louis. Like that one always gets me, which is kind of loosely connected to sports because of the Keith Hernandez. And they went to the story was they went to the Met game, right?
Yeah,
and I saw him on the way out.
Every time that game gets mentioned, I love to bring this up. I just pulled it up again in my notes. So that the game they mentioned that they went to was June 14th, 1987. So I went into Baseball Reference and I looked up June 14th, 1987, and the game was on the road. The Mets put on the road that day, and Keith Hernandez went 2 for 4. He had 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored, and a home run. And McDowell didn't pitch, so just so you know, the number their day was off. That's just
the creation of Baseball Reference backfired for the Seinfeld.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit. Yeah. They didn't have much research. Yeah, exactly.
Well, CeeLo, man,
this
really
was great,
appreciate
man.
the time.
I know so much fun.
You had a big day tomorrow with is it with Carton and Evan or?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. It's one of those things where it's funny. Here it is the night before, and
you don't know.
I'm filling in. I'm going to be in the building. I also have to do some stuff for WCBS 880 and for CBS Sports Radio on the network side. But I'm going to be in the building, so they may or may not want to put me in at some point. Craig's very unpredictable, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
You know, like I haven't seen him in 3.5 years. He knows I'm coming in. He's said, "Hey, maybe we'll have you do something." There's always the off chance that I, sit there. They're on for 5 hours, and my voice is never heard on the show. So you never know.
Well, listen,
very much like Seinfeld. You never quite know what to expect.
And the good news is, I believe Carter and Evan are big Seinfeld fans. So maybe you bring this up. Why not?
If there's any way for me to work it in, I certainly will.
We appreciate it, man. This was
All
awesome.
right, man.
Thank you so much. Good luck, man.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, man. Thank you.
Cheers.